Call our meeting to order, 5:19. Bob, you want to start us out? Roll call.
Bacon present.
Smith present.
Zalid present.
Keequam here.
Penning present.
Coin here.
Byers here.
Fig present.
The approval of the agenda. I think we had an amendment.
Yeah, I'd like
Go
to make a motion to amend the agenda with the addition of, let's see, so we got what item through item C, be item D, and it would be the, contract with B Green Incorporated for the herbicide program on the Pickard Street corridor.
Oh,
Is item D already water and sewer project?
You're not gonna
No,
add it.
you're
No.
looking at.
Oh,
you're
I'm looking
Seven,
at the
70.
reports. Okay.
We're gonna make a new 7D.
Yep.
I get support for that, adding that to the
I'll
agenda.
support.
Motion by Gunning, support by Bacon to approve the B Green proposal to the agenda tonight. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's carried. Moving on to 4, approval of the regular meeting minutes from August 21st, 2018.
Move we approve the minutes from last meeting, 2018, August.
Second.
Motion by Fig, support by Gunning. To approve last month's meeting minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The meeting minutes are approved. Number 5, public comment. Seeing nobody in the galley. Move on to reports. Mark?
Thank you, and good evening, everybody.
Good
Evening.
evening.
First item, action item on the agenda is the accounts payable approval for August. And that is on page 5 of your agenda packet. As it relates to the East EDA, we have the recurring monthly consumer energy bills, $562.94. The monthly MMI invoice payment for $354, and that's for the August service period. And then we finally got some invoices from Wilson Lawn Care, $5,600, and that's for the services for May, June, and July. And the total East DDA accounts payable is $6,516.94, which needs your approval. So I'll just stop there and answer any questions.
If there's no questions, I move that we approve the payments for the register for the month of 8/22 till 9/18 and $6,516.94.
Support.
Motion by Fig, support by Salad to approve the East EDA payables. Any questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's carried.
Thank you. The next page in your agenda packet, page 6, is the 2 checks for the West DDA accounts payable run. One in the amount of $11,740. That's a progress payment to Gordy Frazier for their work on the Pump Station 14 upgrade project. And then a second payment of $20 related to the West DDA GO debt service fund as a paying agent fee, and it's a fee that we pay the paying agent, which facilitates the payments to the bondholders. Now, last payment is August. Last bond payment was August of this year, so this is probably the final paying agent fee for that as well.
Excellent.
Total accounts payable for the West EDA, $11,760 even.
Move that we approve the West DDA bills as presented.
I'll second.
Motion by Zale, support by Coin, to approve the West DDA payables.
And can I ask a quick question before we,
Yep.
do we know, what has been what was the original bond amount, and how many years did it take to pay?
It was, I don't remember the exact amount, but it was, I mean, the last payment was $275,000, I believe, a year. And so, and I think it was taken out, I'm gonna say in 91 or 92. So, whatever, do the math, 20 some years, 23, 24 years.
So, that's just like we burn the,
Oh yeah, we should. Something should be burned. I'm not sure what, but we should be celebration because
25
yeah.
years there.
pop the cork on something then.
And as you probably know, or you'll see in
It
the
was
budget,
91. It was
the
taken
people
over
really
27
popping the
years.
court are the school district.
Yeah.
Because our share, our capture will lose that, and so they're going to be the windfall though, all of a sudden. So they should be the one. And yeah, we'll talk about the budget, but hopefully somebody's called and broke the good news to them. They're getting more money next year. That they probably have no idea that it's coming their way.
Probably don't. If you'd like, I could email you the original principal amount, the duration, the total interest that was paid on it. If you are all interested. I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know.
Yep.
Probably a 15-year note,
Yeah.
at least.
No, it was, I remember because we did the original
Maybe
big
20.
project was in 93.
91.
Yeah,
You're
91 I
right,
think
it
was
was
the bond
91.
issue, but I know, yeah, so it's been 25 years.
25 years.
27, 20, yeah.
Which would make sense for that kind of project. The life of the bond would be something like 25 years or something,
Sure.
that kind of
Yeah.
infrastructure.
I think what the board realized at that they never wanted to go through that again. So then we just made ourselves our own sinking fund, and no, we're bonding. We'll just pay as, build up the savings account and then pay for projects as we go.
They don't even allow you to bond anymore, I don't
I
believe.
don't
The
think so
DDA.
anymore. I think it's
No.
severely restricted if you can.
Any more comments on the motion to approve the West DDA payables? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Payables are approved. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item are the receipt of the August financial reports. There's two sets, income expense statement, which is basically our budget to actual report, and then the balance sheet, and I'll just review all those. Starting on page 7 of your agenda packet is the budget to actual report for the East DDA fund. Again, this is just a receipt and file. The reports do incorporate the budget amendments that you all approved last August. So you'll have, when you're looking at the report, the original budget column and an amended budget column, and the amended budget is now different than the original budget because of your approvals last month. In terms of the revenues, there's no material change from the August report. You will notice that the percent of budget is significantly different than prior months because of the change in the budget amount. The percent of budget used is compared to the amended budget versus the original budget. And on the revenue side, we added about $40,000 of revenue in the amendment, primarily in the area of interest and state aid.
When does the state aid payment show up?
I want to say that's November.
Oh, okay. But you've got an idea on what that's going to be then, obviously.
We have made that application,
Mhm.
and that's where we have gotten the 50,000 from.
Okay.
From our reporting, we are expecting to receive 50,000-ish.
Okay.
original budget was 30,000, and the state will do its thing, review the report, and then cut us a check.
Such a deal.
And that's fundamentally has to do with the lost personal property taxes,
Oh, okay.
and then trying to use some other revenues at the state level to try to make the locals whole,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
subject to annual appropriation by the legislature.
Of course.
On the expense side, nothing out of the ordinary, just the continued normal operating expenses. Of course, it does now include the right-of-way lawn care payment year-to-date of $5,600 that you just approved in your accounts payable run. I don't have anything else to report out on the budget to actual for the East EDA. And unless you have any questions, I'll just move to the West
Sure.
EDA. Budget to actual. And again, budget amendments have been input into the system and incorporated into this report. You may recall, for instance, the property tax capture in the West EDA was considerably above budget. We collected 600,000. We had an original budget of 490. Then we amended the budget last August to recognize what amounted to an under budgeting or an erroneous budget of property tax capture. So that's been accounted for in the amended budget. So now your year-to-date actuals are in line with the budget. And similar to the East DDA, there are no material changes in revenues from the August report, other than the percent of budget is going to look a lot different because of the budget amendment. And then on the expense side, the big difference between the August report and this month's report is the $11,600 that was paid to Gordy Frazier that you just approved a few moments ago. In your packet is also on page 11 the West DDA GO budget to actual report. Again, no material change from last month. This year, at the end of this year will be the last month you received that report, because we'll be closing out that fund. Unless there's some questions, I'll just go to the balance sheet reports, which begin on page 11 of your agenda packet. The East DDA fund balance at the end of August was $1,355,000 and some change. Essentially all of that in the form of cash. So it's a very strong balance sheet, very liquid balance sheet. The same can be said of the West DDA balance sheet on page 12, where there's a fund balance of $1,006,000 and some change, again, almost all or all of it in the form of cash. And then the West DDA GO debt service fund balance sheet on page 13, that has a fund balance of $786, and that'll be used as needed or transferred back to the West DDA fund to zero that. Transfer back to the operating fund to zero out this fund. So if there are any questions on the budget to actual or the balance sheet, be happy to answer those.
Questions, comments? let the record show, financials were presented.
And then the next item in your agenda packet is just the monthly various boards and committees, membership roster and expiration dates. The EDA is listed on page 15. There are no imminent member terms expiring. The next one, I guess, is January of 2019, Mr. Bacon, and a few in the spring of 19. Also in your agenda packet, as we've been doing, are the water and sewer project progress report. They are in your agenda for information only. They begin on page 16 of your agenda packet. I will note that for the water main loop project on Pickard Road, that construction agreement was executed earlier in September. Bonds and insurance requirements have been received. There was a pre-construction meeting held late last week, so that work is going to be done. Be starting imminently and be completed by the end of the year. The pump station #1 rehab and upgrade project. That's engineering has been going on. That construction is not slated to begin till the spring of 2019. There's no issues or problems that have popped up at this point. And then the pump station 14 rehab and upgrade project on May Street. That construction is slated to begin in the fall of 2018. And since the last report, the MDEQ permit has been applied for. And that was applied for in late August. And then the next activity will be seeking bids on that construction work. Also in your packet are some plans for the pump station 14 upgrade. I know the board likes to see those plans. If you have any questions on either the progress reports or these construction plan drawings, then we'll have Ms. Smith come up and address those for you.
Comments, questions on pump station 14?
Nope.
Hearing none, go on to new business. Good report. I like the way you guys do that in that box.
Yep.
And gives us the dates and target, where we're at. Thank
Good.
you.
Yep.
Glad you find it useful.
That's nice.
Going on to new business.
And that is on page 28 of your agenda packet. And we're asking that you consider approval of a proposal from Goodrow Associates for the planning and design work regarding Jamison Park in the amount of $15,327. Just to kind of refresh your memory on this, the board, the EDA approved Jamison Park improvements as part of your 18-19 project plan in the amount of $50,000. At a subsequent meeting, the board asked that a professional firm come in and prepare some planning and design documents so the board could understand what kind of work may be needed out there. We had been using Goudreau for the Isabella Water Administration project, so we just asked them, through a competitive bid process, we asked them to do this work for us. And this item was brought to the board at the July 2018 meeting, at which time the EDA tabled it because they wanted to add, y'all wanted to add a bit of scope to the project and have the mechanical, electric, plumbing review part of the project, as well as a structural evaluation of the buildings done. So we went back and had that work incorporated into the service agreement, and that is in front of you tonight. The scope of service would be looking at the interior of the hall for improvements, designing those, prioritizing them, improvements to the overall site of the park, both the exterior of the building and then the site more broadly, playground equipment, for instance, ball field, dugout improvements. And part of the project with the architect would be to develop associated budget estimates for the various components in order for, and that would include the architect work, the construction work, and any site development, so that what the product coming back to you by the end of the year would be a listing of these various suggested improvements, projected budget amounts, costs to do the work, and then you would be, I think, in a position to prioritize the work that you wanted to see done out there, and you'd have some cost estimates for that. And if you wanted to continue with the project, then we'd be in a position to start some construction bid documents and have some work done in 2019. This phase of the project, this evaluation design work, would be done by the end of 2018. Be happy to answer any questions, and ask that you consider approving this so we can begin.
I'll make a motion to
Is there,
offer the motion as presented by our board packet, request for action to hire, I always want to say Wakely, but that's not right anymore. Goudreau Services to perform scope of services as listed in the board packet for the Jameson Park project.
Motion by Zalet. Support by Smith. Any questions or comments? I have a couple
have
of them
we-
on there, but go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess I look at it from the standpoint of the scope of the services, I think, is fine. I'm kind of one where I look at things sometimes and I look at it through a business owner mentality. And I've looking at it is I feel maybe there's a few things on there that's out of our realm of expertise, but on the other hand, I think that I like the idea of us getting involved in the project and rolling up our sleeves and having a little bit of a vested interest on it. I think some of the things like are pretty commonsensical, the dugouts, the fencing, you know, maybe the building and kind of exterior changes or something that, you know, we need to have some help with. But I look at $11,000 and I say, well, you know, it'd be awful nice to have that $11,000 and actually put it towards some of the projects. That's my mentality on it. I don't know what other people think, but
Isn't it 15,000?
that's including the engineering studies.
I know that we've worked on conceiving ideas for Jamison Park as well as the rest of the East EDA. I don't know where we're at with the back information that we have regarding, because some things have already been done at Jamison Park from years past. Minor upgrades probably, but I just wondered if there was a kind of a background of information that exists. Do we have anything in that regard,
As
Tom?
long as I've been here, this is part of the problem. As-built, I mean, if we ever want to do something to the building or to the park, at least now we'll have some dimensional drawings. We'll have all the building loads. I mean, it's painting and pretty things are fun, but I'll be the first to admit, I couldn't calculate the electrical loading of that circuit panel, and then here comes Kim or somebody, we want to do something in there later. Well, guess what?
It's code or.
All your fire suppression, your emergency egress, how the building material doesn't even meet fire code the way it's put together, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't think anybody, unless you can stamp your own drawings, I'd say we could do it. You know, but that's, you look at the value of the building, the property, the park, 300 grand, $500,000, township property. I think 15 grand is, divide 15 grand by the property value. Just, well, it's money well spent.
Yeah. Do you know if this includes preparation of bidding documents too, or just basically identifying, kind of coming up with a plan of what various items? It doesn't say anything like that, so I'm assuming that
No,
that's
it
not
does not.
included. Yep.
This just will give you an estimate of what it would cost to design some of these projects.
Yep.
If they, you know, whatever they
Yeah,
recommend.
it'll give us a laundry list of
And then
what we've
a
got to
list
do.
of how much bidding
Okay.
and all that kind of stuff.
So
would cost.
if we chose, wanted to have a volunteer paint party, that'd still be available to us to do that?
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I mean, we're not doing any of the work right now, so.
And just to get a little bit more into the background, when the subcommittee approved or recommended to the full board that Jamison Park improvements be part of the project list, $50,000 was allocated for improvements, and when we started talking about that with the board, we had some thoughts, the staff had some thoughts about facade improvements to the building, and then this board decided they wanted to take a step back and develop what we're now calling a master plan for Jamison Park. And so we went about doing that work and came back in July to the board with the cost of approximately $13,000, I want to say at the time, to put together that kind of list of improvements to the site, to the building, to the ball field. And then at that time, and I think at the time the board was receptive to that proposal, but they wanted to add a little bit more to it in the area of mechanicals and electrical and plumbing and structural to get to some of the things the chair was just mentioning. So that's where we are. That's how we've gotten to where we are today. You have to spend a little money sometimes to understand what it is you want to do next, and that's what this is all about.
We'll start, you give us a lot of base data that now you can start to spin off development ideas, such as ADA parking, such as, I mean, there's a lot of things that go along with it, you know what I mean, that it's, It's involved.
Yeah, parking, access, you know.
And I will point out, not to interrupt, but we, later in during my comments, and I think it's your tables, we are submitting, the township submitting a 2% grant application for this work. And we're asking that we're requesting a grant in the amount of $7,500, 50% of this contract. And so the EDA would be paying $7,500. We're requesting a 2% grant for $7,500. There's a letter of support to that effect at your desks here tonight. So the $15,000 would be split 50-50, assuming
Yeah.
we're successful in the receipt of the grant.
I think there's some merit in having professional, again, who can look at all the MEP systems, you know, look at the structure of the building. Yeah, there's probably a fair amount of cosmetic things that they've already, you know, that are obvious. But I think another way to look at this, like Tom says, you can look at the whole value of that property. The other thing is, I think this is a commitment we want to make for the next 10 or 15 years. And by taking a one-time looking at an inventory of what we've got, you know, building-wise, what improvements need to be made in what time frame, I think that's going to give us a blueprint for, you know, the next several years, so that this facility, you know, can be taken care of for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And I don't know about your term on the EDA, but I don't know if we've ever done that with
For this, not that I remember, it's always just kind of been.
Yeah, when something breaks.
piecemeal.
Yeah,
When
no.
something
it's-
breaks.
Yeah.
So when we look at this, do we wanna target what we feel are the pertinent items as far as the parking, the handicap, accessibility, the engineering study of the building, the load of the electrical, those items, as opposed to, say, some of the window dressing items?
I think if you turn loose the architect and the engineers, these are standard construction industry classification
Yep.
categories.
Yep.
Everything is the same. It's like everything starts, your civil, your architectural, it's everything's in series. These guys start looking at those base categories, and it's scientific. I mean, those guys, it's just automatic. And then you get your mechanical, electrical, plumbing, civil, and then they start moving forward. They'll look at it, and right off the bat, those guys are pros. They can see all them parameters, they know what to do. Sure, a lot of the stuff's in good shape. I see a lot of stuff's well painted, there's some nice stuff. However, I think you get somebody like Snyder Staley.
Yep.
They'll come in there right out of the gate. They'll look at, oh, there's your water main entrance,
Yep.
your shut-off valve.
Or there's a crack.
Standard 1909.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure,
Vintage,
it works,
yep.
but we want to go do something that has to require a fire suppression. And, you know what I mean, those guys, they'll see that. You know what I mean, and say, well, you may want to think about that. And I'm guessing, but I mean, there's a lot to it. It seems, but there's actually some method to the madness, I guess. And once you introduce an architect and a team of engineers, they'll bring it. They'll lay it out for you, and that'll be a document now the township owns forever.
Yep.
You can use that next 20 years. For, like I said, I think it's money well spent, 15 grand. I divide that by the value of the building and the property, and you're underground and storing.
Yep.
Shoot.
Especially if we can get that grant.
Yep.
That would
Oh, yeah.
be a
Yep.
bonus.
And we go for further grants after, or we're budgeting. Now this is a base document to start saying, hey, we want to do ball diamonds back there. Well, is there a storm drain, or is there, you know what I mean? Is it gonna work even? But that's where I'm a big believer in these professional, what I call an architectural engineered study. Sometimes it seems like kind of a waste of time, but It's actually pretty scientific. I mean, I think you'd be impressed. Even just the team that they have, they know what they're doing.
And then it takes the liability off of you too, if you have plans already.
Yep.
And then if you try to, Ben and I got on a group and said we hired some building contractor to go in and look at something, and they gave us a bid, well.
The trade, yes.
It might be the trade-off there, and
He's usually gonna give you what's in his best interest.
Yeah, yeah.
or
If
two
you
different
send-
ways or something.
If you
but-
send the HVAC guy over there, oh geez, you need a new furnace,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kind of thing. And these people, I shouldn't say these people, but
I mean,
what we expect out of here is someone to look at everything, and I would much rather have the scope a little more open-ended, so they're looking around for, hey, what improvements are we gonna need in the next 15, 20 years? And look at the electrical loading, look at the plumbing, look at the, things like that. And so let's have a plan rather than wait till something breaks and then, oh, well, we gotta do this, all we need is a roof and everything, so. My guess is there's probably not, they're not gonna spend a whole lot of time on what kind of paint to put in there or stuff that we can do. And again, once we have our list, there's gonna be plenty of opportunity. We're not hiring any contractors at this point. So there'll still be ample opportunity for anyone who wants to get involved and go forward. But I think this is a logical starting point to spend this money and figure out, because we really don't know what we have. I mean, you walk around, but until somebody professionally looks at the electrical system and say, yeah, that's up to code, or it's not, or, do we need fire suppression, it just, those kind of things I can't answer. And the last thing you wanna do is go put a major renovation and then find the fire marshal comes through and says, well, where's your sprinkler system?
Does anybody know the age of that building?
No, I'll bet you
I think it's been added to and
Yeah.
built
The
and
original
added
part of the
to,
building was
and
built
added
in the
to.
late fifties, early sixties, and then the second edition where we had our meeting was in the nineties or early 2000s. I don't exactly remember the date on that stuff. I was around for that, I was not around for this.
Yeah.
But I do know that my grandfather worked on that building when they built that building, and my uncle, because a lot of it was done by volunteers.
Yep.
And that was back in the late fifties,
Okay.
early sixties, from my understanding.
That's what I was guessing. I thought it was probably early 60s, somewhere in there.
So
Well,
where we're at.
I'm cool with it. I mean, as long as you guys are the experts as far as the engineering and everything like that's going, if you feel that, what you were saying to me makes sense, so I can.
I think at this stage in there, we need to get some opinions, and I think we need to look at everything rather than just, the doors are broken. Okay, yeah, you need new doors, but again, look at this as a 10, 15, 20-year forecast, and we need to have a blueprint what we really need to do out there. And like I said, the last thing you wanna do is pave a road and then the next year, come by and tear up the road to put a water main in that you knew was in poor shape. And, there's too much of that goes on.
So the most important aspect of what we're approving is gonna be the engineered drawings, the engineering, evaluation of the building and the, mechanical and electrical.
Yeah, and the way I read this,
Up to
just
code.
to be clear, I don't think we're gonna get a lot of construction drawings out of this. This is just to evaluate the systems and come up with some budgetary estimates.
We're not gonna get any construction drawings
and
out
drawings
of
or
it.
anything, right. So
But
this is
what
just
we are
an
gonna
inventory,
get-
hey, here are the items that you
Okay.
need to look at, and then we can put a master plan together on that, hopefully.
There'll be some, design concepts on, improving the facade of the building.
Yep.
And there'll be a range of what it might cost to do that.
Right.
There'll be a listing of, if you wanna replace the windows, here's what the range of that's gonna be. If you wanna upgrade your kitchen, here's what that's gonna be. A range of costs, and then this board can look at that laundry list and decide what, if any, of those improvements you wanna do.
Yep.
And then
How you wanna do
in
it.
addition, the add-on from the July presentation is is the electrical, mechanical, and structural, so that you have an understanding that if you want to, you know, do a big remodel of the kitchen, that you got a
Oh, yeah.
proper electrical setup to handle it.
And that might not be, the next, could be 10 years.
Right.
But now the township will have this document.
Well, at least you know before you start doing something that, okay, we're gonna have to do that in order to be able to accommodate that in
Yep.
the future, so.
So we had a motion by Zalid. Was there
Support-
some
Support by Coney.
support by Smith?
No, Smith.
With any more questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's carried.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to consider approval of a couple contracts. This is on page 44 of your agenda packet. To consider two contracts with Thomas E. Culver to repair / rehabilitate 28 park benches along Pickard and the 23 waste receptacles also along Pickard. All this is within the boundaries of the East Downtown Development area. The bench work is $9,740 and the waste receptacle work is $7,615. Again, this the park bench and waste receptacle work was part of the project list that was approved in 18 and for 2018 and 19. The discussion since that time was that there was probably an ability to repair, rehab some of this infrastructure at less cost as opposed to just flat out replacing it. And towards that end, EDA member and Supervisor Gunning located a local fabricator, Mr. Culver, to do the work. There are two contracts in your packet. It calls for the benches and receptacles to be removed, disassembled, inspected, determine what replacement parts may be necessary. They produce a list of those replacement parts. We'd then be responsible for ordering and paying for those parts. They'd come back to Mr. Culver for installation and refurbishing, sandblasting the metal components, recoating them, and then the items reassembled and reinstalled at their current location. And the work would be completed in both cases by April 30th of 2019. So we have that in front of you for consideration tonight.
So moved.
Looks like a bargain. Looks like a good deal.
Better
And
than budget.
plus they'll be the same.
So I'll point
I
out
would
that
support that.
that doesn't include the parts.
So he'll come up with the list of parts from the Seaton's or wherever we got them, and then we'll
And
Right.
cut that check at
Right.
that time.
silly question, spare parts are available.
Yeah, that was one of the things that when I went out and looked at them, I found the manufacturer and then contacted the manufacturer, sent them pictures, they told us the model, sent me a
okay.
parts
So
list.
we can still, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, luckily there's parts available, so, and actually there, looks like, I mean, it's gonna be, adding up the numbers on my end, even if he feels like he can't replace the rain bonnets on the receptacles, if he has to replace those, I think you're still 26,000 total for
Oh,
everything.
it's a no-brainer,
Yeah,
so,
and they'll be like new.
yep, nope, and
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know, You got other extra parts just to have them.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, we should probably you figure the failure part is, it looks like the failure part in every one of the benches was a support post at the bottom.
Really?
Yeah, and that's the only thing that was powder coated because the ends were
okay.
cast.
Yep, yep.
So the ends were cast, and it was just that powder coated piece of the base, but you figure that's road salt,
Yep.
sidewalk
Yep.
salt.
Yep.
But the rest of the mechanisms, to me, look like they were in decent shape, and I think, again, just the sandblasting, refinishing on all those, but that part was $61.
Yeah, that's,
So, the rain bonnets were like 221.
There was one bench down to the end of Mid-Michigan College that probably take out, put in storage some of that. It's at the very end of the park. There's two of them in mid. One's by the building, one other one's way down to the end of the, and there's nobody walks there anymore. I think the sidewalks end there. I don't know. If you want to put it in storage somewhere.
So you're saying it's a sidewalk to nowhere?
hey.
I have a long
Somebody had to
walking.
build that side.
You never
See the
know.
resort patron
You
coming
never
that
know. We
direction.
may need that one.
Needs to rest her legs. So we have a motion by Zalid, and did I hear support?
I support,
Big?
yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
Just one quick one. Is what structure is this? We're dealing with an individual?
Individual.
And so basically we will carry, he's not gonna have any liability insurance, not that this is a high liability type job, but if there's any issues, we'll just have to take care of that.
I think in the contract it mentions there's some studs that where the benches are fastened, they're gonna be exposed. So, but talking to him, I think what he's gonna try to do is he's gonna take probably about 4 to crack, put them back, and then grab another 4. So
No,
yeah,
no,
see
I
if
just say that
Yeah.
we're gonna self-insure on this one, but I just, like I say, it's,
He doesn't have like insurance that he's doing this work, or?
no, not that I know of.
so again, it's not like he's out working in the middle of the street.
No.
Or designing, the stuff
Pulling into
that
a
people are
parking
doing.
lot, pulling
Yeah.
a bench.
He's been around for a while, too, so
Mm.
been good.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, motion by Zale, support by Fig, all in favor of approving this recommendation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, and motion's carried. Moving on to 7C.
And this is to consider approval, adoption of the FY19 budget for the East DDA fund and the West DDA fund, and to further recommend to the Board of Trustees that they adopt this budget. And this begins on page 48 of your agenda packet. So we have 2 funds in 2019 that we're talking about. The first is the East DDA Operating Fund, and those highlights are as follows. The total appropriation is $440,680. The projects that were approved in 2018, for instance, the Jameson Park, Pickard Road, benches and trash receptacles that we just talked about, the water and sewer related projects, the road work. Those are either have been completed or in the process of being completed. Some of those will flow into fiscal year 2019. And so when we estimate the cash flow needs of those projects, we've appropriately budgeted in 2019 what we think is going to be spent in that fiscal year versus what may have been spent in 2018. In the East DDA fund, all the programming that is traditional in the area, such as lawn mowing, irrigation, landscape maintenance, the holiday lighting, the banners, the snow plowing, all that's part of this budget. There's a transfer to the fire fund of $64,000 to support the fire fund, which is supported in part with a millage to pay for fire services that are contracted with the city of Mount Pleasant. There is $50,000 budgeted for just miscellaneous projects in 2019. The net revenue and expense for the budget is expenses exceeding revenue by $3,330, and the projected 2019 year-end fund balance is $991,000, and that you could compare that in your minds to the fund balance that we spoke of a few moments ago of $1 million. I want to say it was 300 and some thousand dollars. So it's a drawdown of the fund balance of about $360,000 compared to what it is today. But that's by plan, that's by design, that's intentional. And that's all I have on the EDA budget. There is still room for additional projects as they get identified with the projected fund balance of $990,000. But I believe it's the board's intent to begin continuing to draw that down, and recognizing that every year there's, if I look at page 50, there's approximately $400,000 of new revenue coming into this fund every year. To be able to execute the master plan of Jameson Park or other improvements within the district. The next fund that I'll review is the West EDA operating budget, and that is on page 53 of your agenda packet, and those highlights include total appropriation in FY19 of $616,470. There's property tax capture in the West EDA of $304,000, which is down significantly from prior years because we're not capturing the school taxes anymore as a result of paying off that debt. The Lincoln Road improvement south of the bridge, which this board approved its participation earlier this year, is budgeted in 2019 in anticipation of project completion. There's funding in this 2019 budget in the West EDA for the overlay of Lincoln Road north of M20 up to Lincoln, which was part of your project list that you approved earlier this year. Also, the West EDA contributes to the fire fund $45,600, which is a traditional expense. The net revenue expense for FY19 is expenses greater than revenue of $309,000, which is again a use of fund balance, a drawdown of fund balance, which has been planned and anticipated. The FY19 projected year-end fund balance is $516,000, which is around $500,000 less than the fund balance that you looked at as of August 31st, 2018. But again, you have annual revenue of around $300,000 coming into this fund. So there is capacity to do other projects. I think the big one coming down the pike would be the Lincoln Road north of the bridge to M20. I don't have an idea, a good idea yet, of when that might be undertaken. And there is no money budgeted in this budget for that because it's not going to happen in 19. But you will have resource available if you want to consider participating in that activity.
Sure, the hat will be passed around when the time comes.
Do we know that for sure the south end of the bridge is gonna be in 18 at this point in time? Do they've
In 19?
in 19, excuse me?
Yeah, everything that I've been told is that it'll probably go out like late fall or over the winter, and then it'll be built next year. They've got all the funding pieces in place,
Okay.
so.
We haven't found out whether they're gonna keep part of the road open or close the whole thing down. We
I'm
talked
sure
about that
the
separately.
leg on Lincoln Road will be closed. I've heard some conversations about keeping, at least as they're working on the intersection on Broomfield, at least keeping one lane open there. But, you know, going north, it's possible, but I haven't heard anything about keeping Lincoln Road open.
Under sidewalks, you got Lincoln Road to Lux, to the Township Hall, and then there's a miscellaneous, what was the miscellaneous sidewalk?
That was just money set aside, earmarked for sidewalks that are unknown at this
I
point.
don't know at this point, but we've already approved them to put the money aside in our,
In the budget, it would be appropriated if the project came up to put sidewalks in and we wanted to help fund it or fund all of it. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that.
that is not set aside for any specific project though. Okay.
Mark, on the 170,000 for the overlay, I assume this is what we're talking about out there. I can't remember being out looking at it, but are they gonna try to keep that wider for a walk or a bike pass, or are they gonna move further to the ditch for the asphalt? Or if they can do
Oh,
that,
no, you're
No,
talking about just
that's
all
right.
in.
just overlaying.
Put
This
an
is
overlay
just an
on this
overlay right now.
North of 20.
I think longer
right, yeah, it'd be
term, the
3.
road commission has some plans to do more significant improvements to this road and possibly widen it. You know, we'll have three lanes, a turn lane south of M20 to Broomfield, and we could imagine eventually that will make its way up this way. At which time I would, you know, the message from this board, I think, and certainly the Board of Trustees, is to create opportunities for other types of transportation besides just roads. It's a bit of a struggle with the road commission because their business is roads. But that message is being put out there.
I think you and I talked about that, Jim, didn't we, back when we were talking about this project, was
Yep.
what it would cost extra to be able to,
Yeah, and the cost would be significant the way they would want to do it, because the road commission typically would not want to just pave the existing, and typically whenever you do that, like they did in Whiteville Road, they're going to want to cut down, because basically that shoulder is just been stuff that's been thrown out there and isn't really the best material, and you can see that on I think this isn't too bad, but you can see parts of any county road that the shoulders are just, you know, the pavement is sunk, and that's why, is because the base material isn't there. And so you start going, yeah, you can make it look pretty right off the get-go, but yeah, if there isn't a good base, and anytime they widen the roads out, and you've seen several projects around the area, they will at least dig down along the edge of metal, along the edge of the pavement, and put good sand down there and build that base up, so they know when they're that asphalt they're putting out there. And I think that's basically what I've seen on any of the roads that they're doing, is you're gonna have, I don't know if they're ever gonna call them bike lanes, but you will have 3 and 4 foot paved shoulders.
Like Baseline Road.
Yeah. So that's what I see, and like Mission Street, if you wanna look at it that way.
But this is just for an overlay
Yeah,
to get kind of
I
rid of the
understand.
ruts.
Yeah.
Go down.
Yeah.
I think you explained it well. For me, it's a
Yeah.
simple layman look at, why don't you just move it over a little ways?
Yeah.
But it's not
Yeah.
gonna.
Yeah,
won't
and,
hold
and
up, so.
and it's like, do you put it,
Yeah.
like our discussion on Jameson, so I think that would be a major project, and then at that point, as Mark alluded, I think somewhere down in the 10-15 year plan, especially if we can get 3-4 lane up to, from the, Lincoln Road from the south, I think then, we've already got 3 lane over here, 4 lane over here, so I think that's gonna become the next leg. And so, I think the intent of the project was,
Broomfield probably, wouldn't you think first?
that would be, yeah, that'd be another thing.
Did they ever
that,
consider making this M20? Bringing Pickard?
Oh, you got a lot of politics.
Oh,
doing
I know.
that.
I was on the city
Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
when we did that, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Didn't go over too well, but I just thought it sure makes a lot of sense.
Well, it'll become a de facto M20,
Yeah.
whether, and I don't know how the tax dollars, road funds follow around there, but it'd be nice to get paid for that. or compensated, 'cause
Yeah.
we're gonna be the ones that gotta maintain it.
Yep. Any more comments, questions on this request for EDA action? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion by Bars, support by Fig. To approve and adopt this fiscal 2019 budget for East EDA, West EDA, and to recommend to the trustees. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. And motion's carried. What do you got, Ben, on this B Green
And we got the,
added item here?
yep, added item, Be Green Incorporated. This is, Mr. Fig, thank you for putting your time in on this one and getting it prepared for us.
Yeah, my pleasure. We had budgeted $2,500 for this improvement of the turf in the road right-of-way green belts. And we had talked with Chris, who does a lot of broadleaf control. He's all over the county, and additionally he's all over the state. So he's qualified, he's licensed and insured. So he's a top quality person in this field. And he came in with an estimate of $1,740. That would be the cost of doing the fall application that we talked about at the meeting that was at Jameson Park last month. And that would cover the work that would be done there. It would leave some extra money if we needed to. We had talked about putting in a different type of material that would help to postpone dandelion production. The dandelions germinating in the spring, it would hold them down. And then if there was additional breakthrough or applications that needed to be done, it would be on a basis of the same amount if the entire parcel was done, but if it was less than that, it would be portioned out. So if I anticipate most of the broadleaf, especially the crabgrass, being controlled at probably 90% or better. So there might be a little bit of spot control that would need to be done. And hopefully the dandelions will be contained dramatically. There might be some additional we'd have to look at, but that'd be as needed. I think we can look at that and see how it goes.
Yep.
Additionally, he had proposed some possibilities of a growth regulator and grub control, which are secondary issues that we can kind of debate as needed. But right now, looking at what we can do to try and prevent the crabgrass from coming on and not being holding to the weather so much, we can actually do that work in the fall, and then we aren't in doubt of having that controlled. We'll have a better grip on it. So my recommendation would be that we try to get this set up so he can do his work while the weather's still available yet this year.
You're here.
Looks good to me.
Yep, let's do it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agreement with Be Green Incorporated for $1,740 to apply broadleaf protection on the EDA district on Pickard Street, both north and south.
I'll second.
Motion by Gunning, support by Coyne, to approve this Be Green proposal. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion's carried.
We'll make contact with the company and get them scheduled.
Okay, great, thanks.
And then if I may, I just have a couple comments while I'm here.
Go ahead.
In terms of updates on the roads, as you know, cross lanes has been done within your district. That's been repaved. And the other roads that we're gonna get asphalt overlay, the workers were out over the weekend doing that. I don't know if they're done yet, but that,
I noticed they were down there, and that nice fresh asphalt looks great.
good.
Yeah, haven't driven on it, but it looks great.
Meridian Bridge should be open by the end of this month. We did have some sort of surge or some electrical issue with the large banners out on kind of near 127. We have those 4 large banners and lights on them. So there aren't any lights on there right now. That's in the process of being repaired. There is a special zoning board of appeals meeting tomorrow night as it relates to the Mountain Town Brewery is looking to put in a restaurant and a brewery operation down at the corner of M20 and Lincoln, which is in the West EDA district. So I wanted to mention that to you all. And what they're seeking a text interpretation to make sure they're on solid ground to operate a restaurant as the primary use, and then the brewery is a accessory use. And because our zoning code doesn't directly address that. And so we prior to the request for a text amendment, there's been a request for a zoning administration compliance letter. In order for us to look at that, we requested a certain amount of information from the developer, truck traffic for deliveries, and how much food sales versus beer sales, and how much beer sales on site versus off site. And we received back that information, issued a letter that indicated that it would be an allowed use with the restaurant as the primary and the brewery as the ancillary. And because of the money that the developer has at stake, they're wanting to go another step further and just getting a text interpretation on that question from the ZBA. So that's tomorrow night.
Good.
And then the last thing is, and I don't believe there's any motion per se, but there is a letter in front of you that it's a letter of support from the EDA that would be made part of the 2% application for the Jameson Park design. And if you're so inclined to support that as a board, then maybe just some nods would allow Tom, the chair, to sign it.
I was thinking like a motion or a consensus of
There you
those
go.
present
Yeah.
to forward this letter of support signed by the chairman.
You got my support.
it's-
I support
Okay.
it very much. It's a well-written letter.
Yep. Can you draft that yourself?
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. Looks
Typos in it.
professionally done.
I may, I would hope.
Grammar looks fine.
Coming from,
Thank you.
remember the drive?
Thank you,
Thanks.
Mark.
And I think that's about it. I'll meeting adjourned at 6:29. Thank you.
14 minutes over.
Meeting, gentlemen.
Nope. Thank
Good
you,
discussion.
Ben and Marty, for the extra work.